I'm author Mark Muncy,
And I'm author Erika Lance.
and this is Eerie Travels. Greetings, travelers.
Greetings, travelers. Wow, I said that very excited. I don't know what just happened.
You're still finding your thing. I mean, I love that you do it differently every time. It's awesome. So
I think that is not because I'm finding my thing, but I really appreciate that you said it like that. I just think sometimes I'm just like greetings, and then I'm like, why am I doing an accent? What the fuck just happened there? Anyway, okay. We're starting. Okay.
What have you been up to?
Oh, well, you'd think a lot of drinking at this point from the beginning
I think
of this
so.
episode.
Like.
I'm actually only drinking some ginger lime water from Nixie,
Nice.
but no, it's just been kind of busy. It's a busy season. It's going into busy con season for us. So
Yeah.
Getting all of that stuff underway.
And I am still in the process of changing bunkers. So my living room now looks like the end of Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. So
I appreciate that. I also appreciate what you told me you're doing today, which makes me laugh because you are transferring all of your VHSs to DVDs.
Not all of them, but quite a few. And I have some treasures, including my recording of the Star Wars Holiday Special. So which was definitely that I don't know if you want to call that a treasure or a curse.
No, but, I think that's one of the cursed items in your Indiana Jones collection there.
Yeah. I did mark one box with a burnt in just covered a burnt symbol of the Home Depot symbol on the side. So
okay.
And I just labeled it item ARC.
Yeah, that's how these things start. Oh my gosh, which reminds me, I got to tell you something funny that happened. And before we go, we have a guest this episode, so we shouldn't do this too long. But I talked to a friend of mine who was telling me, she was talking about what to do when she dies. And it's a horrible topic to think about, but I think everybody should plan for it, especially if you have family and children. Like, please do the paperwork. It becomes a big mess for everybody.
Beforehand. You don't want to second guess these things.
So she was telling me she thought she came up with a brilliant solution so that she didn't take up space in a grave, is that she wanted to be, I guess you can be put into a gem now.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, she's telling me this, and I'm like, and then she's like, whatever, I can just go to a pawn store or something. And I'm like, you are intentionally creating a haunted object and then putting it into the world. I don't know that anybody's thought of this. She's like, yeah, no, I was thinking when my parents pass away, one can each be an earring. I'm like, oh, like wow. the nope part of me, Mark, was like, how is this a good idea at all?
No, I'm all for the mushroom coffins so that the worms can get me easier and do what I'm supposed to do. So
something, but don't make cursed objects. Why would anybody make a cursed object?
There's plenty of easier ways to make a cursed object. You don't have to involve your remains. It's awesome. So.
And that's true. Okay, let me get to breaking news because we need to introduce our amazing guest that we have.
We have breaking news this episode?
We have breaking news, and this is going to make you so happy. Just wait. Okay, so from our friends at Paranormality Magazine, I need you to be prepared, Mark.
There's
now a system of cryptid encounter classification.
It's like first kind, second kind, third kind type things.
It's classes. So I'm going to do brief, but I'm including the link so everybody can read this. Class 4, to begin with, is the lowest of the tiers, which is barely considered an encounter at all, which is no real interaction or proof. However, so you hear noises, whatever, you see objects, blah, blah, blah.
Listen, did you smell something?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. It's for those people that can smell the color 9. Class 3 is more securely a cryptid encounter, distinct footprints, glimpses of the creature, louder sounds, that kind of thing. Class 2 is unblocked, undisputed sight of the creature and large amounts of museum quality proof. I don't know which museum. We've been to some fun museums, so I don't know if that counts, but And then class 1, which is the most exciting and dangerous tour of them all, was the creature acknowledges your presence and even approaches you.
What?
You
Okay,
have
so
physical,
we're talking Flatwoods level there.
Yes. Hostile or non-hostile. You have physical contact or the creature tries to communicate with you. So there's a whole thing on this. So,
oh man,
you know,
we're gonna have to look into this because I think we could, revisit things that we've done in the past, like Hopkinsville and and other ones, and just determine what class they are. So
exactly. So this is a new system. Anyway, yes. So we now can ask our listeners what class of encounter that they had with whatever.
Let's see if this is taken off by any of the other organizations, like if MUFON or the BFRO or any of these other guys take up this system, then we'll start using it. But so that gang, you can go visit paranormalitymag.com and go get that news. And if you want more in-depth articles and stuff, Paranormality Magazine, you can subscribe. And if you use the code TRAVELS at their website, you can get 10% off and let them know that we sent you. So
yeah. I think we should make some stickers or something that say class whatever encounters, class whatever travelers. I'm going to make a note about that.
I think at Dragon Con we should have ribbons, class 4 Eerie Travels encounter. So.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, I love that idea. Okay. We need to introduce our guest.
Yes, they've been waiting patiently in the wings, and in our spacious green room. Yes. That is filled with cryptic coolers and other things. So
and green
M&Ms. I was gonna say there's no snacks in this green room. I feel
stupid upset. Sasquatch got hold of them again.
It happens. So our guest today, having back on the podcast because she is so amazing. We had no choice. That and she forced us to. So those are two things that made this possible.
Yeah.
Bribery is the thing. So
yes, exactly. The amazing author Beau Lake. Thank you for being here. Yay!
Hi, Beau.
Hi, Mark.
When we were chatting after the last recording, we brought up the subject that we were going to talk about one of my favorite American Horror Story seasons, which has literally no bearing on this whatsoever, other than it was an actual historic event, which is Roanoke, the lost city of Roanoke. So, did I say that correctly? It's Roanoke. Lost Colony.
Never quite made city. Yeah.
Whatever. Semantics, Mark. Semantics. But, and Beau was like, I am an exact not expert on this topic, but I want to talk about it. So
I want to talk about every topic. So
and she was like, I live in the state that has a Roanoke, and it's not the Roanoke we're talking about. So
yes. A common misconception.
It's a nearby Roanoke. They're near each other.
Well, that's okay. I went to Winston-Salem, North Carolina as a kid, and I was so upset because there was no witch things anywhere. And I was like, wait a minute, there's no Salem here. There were no trials here. I was so disappointed.
Okay, but Beau, let's start this by you explaining what the lost colony, there you go, of Roanoke is.
All right. So in 1587, settlers traveled to Roanoke Island to rebuild an outpost that had existed there and I guess was destroyed or abandoned by previous colonists. They were led by John White, who, when they got there, decided he was the governor. So he was the governor of Roanoke Island. And he was the grandfather of the first child born to English parents in the New World, whose name was Virginia Dare. And she comes up later. She's become like a part of folklore and used in some unsavory ways. So John White at one point was like, I'm going to return to England for supplies and maybe to get some more people. So he leaves and he was supposed to come back like right away. He was supposed to go and then grab some stuff, come back from England. But then the Anglo-Spanish War started and all the ships were diverted for the war effort, which kind of meant that he was in England for 3 years. when he returns 3 years later on the date of his granddaughter's 3rd birthday, he found that everyone was gone. All 115 people. There were 80 men, 17 women, and 11 children had disappeared. All the buildings had been taken down. You can't see my air quotes, but I'm air quoting, as though they weren't in any hurry and there was no sign of a struggle or battle. The only thing left behind was a fence that surrounded the whole colony. And in one of the fence posts, someone had carved the word Croatoan. And then on a tree nearby, it seemed like they started writing it again, and it was C-R-O, Crow. And Croatoan was the name of an island, another island south of Roanoke Island. And there's a whole legend about it being carved by John White's daughter while she stood over the body of her husband, holding Virginia Dare's arms as she's carving it. And that's basically the story, because they were never found, never spotted again. And there are a bunch of theories about what happened, but they're odd, and I'm not sure what is correct.
Yeah, this is one of those great mysteries that has been debated. It is considered the first great American mystery, at least the first great American mystery from European settlers, because there are plenty before that. But we don't talk about that. That's
No, yeah, we like to start our history not where history actually starts.
Yeah.
So
right, exactly. Where we become involved, our descendants become involved. But
which is
there's more history to this. I like the premise. When I was a kid, we went to Roanoke, the island, for a field trip, because that's what you do in West Virginia. You take field trips to all over the Washington D.C. to Roanoke, because you're a few hours from everything. And one of the cool things is we went to Roanoke Island and we watched the play The Lost Colony, which is still performed there to this day. It started in 1937 and it's still going on. It won a special Tony Award for excellence in theater and all this. And of course, it is very, very loosely based on this. But I remember at the time, our history teacher saying, "Look, this is real. This is what happened. This is history." And of course, it's history versus Hollywood, as we've discussed many times on this show. It was the same thing, even though it wasn't Hollywood. It was a stage play.
Well,
I mean, it's like that thing where, like, if you go to Chincoteague Island, they always show the movie about Misty of Chincoteague because it's their one thing. So of course they keep showing the play because it's their one thing that gets tourists to come in.
So I do want to, yes, I agree. So let's touch on the significance of the word, because colonies and cities and towns did move and still move, but did move in the past because previously things like technology weren't realized. And I'm going to be very, very profound here, Mark, Beau, brace yourselves.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
But you didn't realize where maybe the lands were not fertile enough to sustain growing things, or maybe there was flooding that you didn't realize when you started with the town because the flooding happened in a different season. Like, there's a lot of things that we take for granted now, because when we go to build somewhere, people usually look at those things versus sort of arriving and starting to build without any of the historical context, or people looking at lands and things like that would make it, you go, wait a minute, this may not be the best place to build. Plus, there were diseases and things like that. Plus, and outside of that, let's talk about the significance of the word for a moment that was found, because that's part of what grew this legend to be super duper creepy. So, Mark, take it away.
Well, Croatoan was the name of that island, and also the name of the tribe that lived in that area. So some people were like, "Oh, the word was describing that they'd been attacked by this tribe," but these were the friendly tribe. There were a couple tribes that were out and out enemies of these visitors. Now remember, this is not the first colony at Roanoke. There were several others. Sir Francis Drake was trying to found colonies in this new world. Supposedly he had come to the West Coast and even come to North Carolina, and he was trying to found a colony. And later on, we would found one in Jamestown that lasted. This one didn't. So he sent a second colony. He sent a third colony, groups to reinforce the people, and they were already at war because they'd gone into town or gone into inland a little bit. And instead of making peace with the tribes, they raided them and stole all their grain and corn and fled back and split it with other Englishmen who sailed it back to England. Because we were terrible. And they were just bad. So this colony was going to fix it. They were going to try to be peaceful. They were going to try to do it right this time. And that's why they brought the women with them this time. They hadn't really done that before. And they basically, he, like you said, earlier, he was going to go get some supplies for him because it was a rougher winter than they expected. It was a rougher place than they expected. So he's like, I'll be back in a year. And then that war broke out. Queen Elizabeth in Spain decided, hey, we don't like each other again. And so, but one of the cool characters in all this is a guy named Fernandez, who was a Portuguese Spaniard who came with them to the colony, and he was a pirate, and he robbed Spanish and French and Dutch. He wouldn't attack the British, and he had worked out he was with another pirate who had been captured and all this, and he worked out a deal with the British government because he was so good at not attacking British that they let him come on this journey. And he was like third in command, second in command. And so he wound up getting promoted, and he was one of the guys who, helps found this colony. And of course, that play I saw as a kid, he was the bad guy because, he was Spanish. So obviously he was secretly plotting to destroy the colony. And that play really plays that up quite a bit.
Oh, it's all in the playwright or the person writing the history.
The play's the thing.
Yeah.
But Croatoan, I think honestly, that's just it. They wrote where they went. They said, hey, we're going here. And so when What's His Face comes back, White comes back, 3 years later instead of a year later, and he finds that word. He's like, oh, well, let's go to that island. But then there's bad weather. They don't have supplies for an inland trip because they thought they were just coming here again. So they don't go. Why don't they go? They know here's the word, but they don't. It's too much work.
Like after all the storms went through, like, why was he like, oh, I don't need to go check on my family. It's fine.
It's fine. Granddaughter, she's fine. I'm sure she's growing up nicely.
She's
Let's
fine.
just go back to England. I'll somehow all of the men on this next trip convince them to go back to England. Okay.
Yeah. And it was odd too, because they knew that there was the possibility that something bad would happen, because he even prepared them in advance. He was like, hey, if while I'm gone something happens and you have to move somewhere, I want you to carve a Maltese cross into the tree.
Yeah. So
he knew that something bad could have happened while he was away.
But
so I'm not really sure why there's there's no cross.
Well,
maybe they just forgot.
What if they were spelling out that CRO was spelling out cross? And they just didn't quite
they didn't know what it looked like. So they're like, oh shit, we'll just write cross.
Well, what's interesting to me about this story a little bit is the disappearance of her, because they were never found again. Right. Well, so that's part of the mystery of this entire thing, is they were never located, correct?
Yeah. Now Croatoan Island is now Hatteras Island, which is well populated. And so some people are like, oh, well, they've obviously surveyed that. Yes and no. There have been some digs there, but a lot of it is private property and would have been dug up before we had all the protections and everything against archaeology and against native sites and all that. So, and a lot of the families there don't want any digging, because suddenly what happens if your yard turns into, the lost colony turning up, then you've lost your land, eminent domain. So, and this is, post, everything when they started figuring out, oh, why don't we just do this? But now there's lots of conspiracy theories about this, of course. And of course, every writer in their world has used this as fertile, material for, Native American lore and all this, of course, where they wiped out by, well, there's no signs of struggle at this site and everything, but that's back then. This is not like they have forensic scientists, able to determine if there was a scuffle. This is just, it just didn't look like it to them. It had been abandoned for some time. They didn't find any bodies. That's all the notes say. It doesn't say, oh,
Well, and here's the thing again, traveling is not like getting in your car and going somewhere, right?
Mhm.
And we've joked in the past about one of my favorite video games of all time, the Oregon Trails, right?
Yeah.
Where people literally died of dysentery. Like there are things that can wipe out an entire populace of people. So if they were moving, they could have died along the way back or been killed or there's so many things. But what was weird was literally nobody from this colony was seen or heard from again. Correct? Like,
I mean, they were going to an island though, and that island is prone to hurricanes, and there's shipwrecks all around it. So it's possible that they just shipwrecked.
One of the theories is they tried to sail home and got lost at sea. That is one of the theories. And another theory is that they merged with the Croatoan tribe. And a lot of people are like, oh no, they couldn't support that many hundred some odd settlers that would have destroyed them. I think that's discrediting the native tribe that, they could have easily handled 100, new people. But again, maybe not even that many, because how many died in that first winter? How many, didn't make it? If it's a couple dozen, oh, definitely. Then people change their story. But now all this, suddenly 1937, the world changes. That is with the discovery of the Dare Stone.
So explain what the Dare Stone is.
Okay, Beau, do you want to do that or do you want me?
I want you to do it.
All right, sure. All right. So the Dare Stone is 1937. This guy discovers a rock, and it's hard to really explain. It's got this carvings on it, and the carving looks like it's written in Old English, and it's dated on it, and one side of the stone reads, Ananias Dare and Virginia went hence unto heaven, 1591. Any Englishman show this rock to John White, governor of Virginia. Now that's me. It's written in Old English, so that's the translation basically. So, and then on the other side is this long dissertation of what happened, and it says, Father, so it's written to John White from Virginia. As soon after you go for England, we came here, only misery and war for 2 years, above half dead these 2 years, more from sickness, being 24. A savage with a message of a ship came to us with a small space of time. They became frightened of revenge and ran all away. We believe it was not you. Soon after, the savages said spirits were angry. Suddenly they murdered all save 7. My child Ananias too were slain with much misery. Buried all near 4 miles east of this river upon a small hill. Names were written all there on a rock. Put this there also. If a savage shows this to you, we promised you would give them great plenty presents. E.W.D.
And I put a link just for all of our travelers in the show notes. I didn't do that. Our amazing producer Callie will
Magic
do.
producer.
But
Yeah.
I put a link to, and it's a weird looking stone. It's a fairly large stone. So what is the deal with the Dare Stone?
Well, as soon as this comes out, basically a group of Emory professors, and most notably among them is a man named Hayward Pierce Jr. Remember that name; it's going to come up again. And they traveled to the site where this guy discovered the stone. They could not determine the precise location, but they figure this guy is kind of reliable. The guy who found it's a guy named Hammond, Louis Hammond.
Okay.
And now this is in Atlanta, right? And so they publish the findings, and they really can't prove this stone is 100% legit until we can actually find corroborative evidence. So they, there were some other accounts of survivors and a supernaturally motivated massacre of the people. That comes from some other, pre-1800s, discoveries along the Chowan River, which is just west of Roanoke Island. And now they did say the spelling was very Elizabethan, and that the tools that could have done it were likely in possession of the colonists. And there was a stone carver among the colonists. So that could have been him, dictating, Virginia dictating to him. And so everybody wanted to find the burial site, right? Because it says, hey, this is where we buried everybody over here. And well, and whoever finds that site is going to have a historical gold mine, right? That's going to become, already at this point, Roanoke is becoming a tourist attraction. And remember the time, this was found in 1937. What premieres in 1937? The Lost Colony play.
Oh.
So now,
so very suspicious.
Very little bit, right? I mean, imagine, you write a book about UFOs, and then suddenly, that day you find a UFO encounter in your backyard. All right, maybe there's something to it. Everybody would have said, but this is history professors, so it's got to be legit, right? I mean, these are, they wouldn't make this stuff up. And a couple guys come out and say, we found pieces that look like that. But the Pierces, they don't investigate it. They're like, they don't investigate those two guys. And so they don't add their rocks to a collection, because what they start doing is they start finding more and more rocks, because this guy comes out of the woodwork, and his name is Hayward Pierce, and he has land, and he finds suddenly all these rocks. And the guy who finds them is named Bill Eberhart. And he comes to these guys in Atlanta and says, look what I've got. And they start matching the original stone. Not quite 100%, but close enough to where they're considered a thing.
Like, do they fit together? Like
in pieces and stuff like that. Some of them are broken in half and fit together and all this. And so this guy's a backwoodsman and a stone cutter. And that's why he's finding these stones, is what he says. But he also has like a well-known history of selling fake Native American artifacts. So, and because this guy only had a third grade education, they decide he is not smart enough to create this elaborate of a hoax.
Wow.
And so he finds 14 more stones very quickly. So they start labeling them at this point. So now we have the multiple Dare stones, and the first one the Hatteras stone, or Hammond's Chowan stone, they called it because it's on the Chowan River. That's Dare stone number 1. Now these, the Eberhards, are stones 2 through 14. And they're kept in a case. And they say basically in 1591, the massacre that she talks about, they validate it, but they also, this is found 400 miles away.
Wow.
Yeah. And they say basically that massacre actually occurred in South Carolina, not North Carolina. And that these new stones were carried by native tribes. That's why they're not found in the same place, supposedly. And Dare Stone 2 had one of the texts says, "Father, we go southwest," and it leads them to the Chattahoochee River into Georgia. And then they look for more stones there. And guess what? They find them.
What?
24. So 8 more stones are found. And they travel towards the great Hatanusi lodgment. And we are living in primeval splendor till 1593. And suddenly Eberhard finds 3 more new stones in 1940. And he still won't lead people to where he's finding these things. He always picks them up. They're like, don't pick them up. We need to study where they come from and all this. But every time, oh, I found more stones here. Here they are.
I got so excited I picked them up.
Yeah, I couldn't help. I had to bring them to you. So all the way up to 31 stones, total now. And
I need to call a massive degree of bullshit on this.
That's the reason we're all curious about is why didn't anybody say, hey, this is kind of awkward, right? There's some, hang on a minute, and then the fact that, then he finds an inscription on a cave ledge and they assign that a number because some kid chisels it off and takes it. Yeah. It's like, okay, we finally had a place where what could have possibly been. Oh, no, some kid took it. And it's crazy. And of course, what's great is, one of the towns involved in this is Roswell, Georgia. So we get to bring Roswell into this.
Well, I have a question. So going down the rabbit hole, and I'm going to put a link again to what all of these stones apparently say, but they all appear to be stones indicating the death of people. Like like grave markers. Am I incorrect that they look like grave markers?
Yeah, and that's what they're written like. They're written like, hey, on the one side is a death usually, and then on the back is usually this long diatribe of what happened and why we're here where we are now. And then there was 2 guys that was discovered. They're the ones that had the split stone, right? The jet stone. One, the dad had it, the father-in-law had it in a drawer, his tool drawer, and the other guy had it. So that stone kind of comes into question because it's like, okay, wait a minute. This wasn't brought to us by this stone cutter. This is brought to us by 2 random dudes. So maybe it makes all these others fit. But and they're supposedly near that cave is where they originally found it, that cave. And it says, and it talks about John White being a prisoner and Griffin and Agnes Dare.
Okay. Before we keep going, we got to stop real quick. We got to take a break.
Yeah, because
I need to regain my facilities here. Okay.
Here's where it gets weird.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Erie, Appalachia. Gear up for a frightful jaunt into the darkest reaches of the ancient Appalachians. Folks deep within the Appalachian hollers lean close to the campfire to share stories of the inexplicable with hushed awe. Monsters rumbling in the hills, strange lights darting through the pitch black night sky, horrible occurrences almost ineffable in their bizarre tragedy. Tall tales, you might say. Tell that to the Flatwoods monster in Braxton County, West Virginia, or the Goat Man of Louisville. Look into his humanoid eyes and let him know you don't believe. And what of those apparitions in Mammoth Cave's Corpse Rock, or the Satan spawn known as the Jersey Devil? How do you respond when confronted by these mysteries? From the metaphysical energy that swirls near Serpent Mound in Ohio to Point Pleasant's Mothman legacy, Mark Muncy and Carrie Schultz explore the dark history lurking in the shadows of Appalachia. Read by Mark Muncy, author and experts on strange folklore with appearances on shows such as Ancient Aliens, The Curse of Robert the Doll, and many, many more.
Greetings, mortals and others. I'm Dick Terhune, the voice from hell. I work with haunted attractions all over the US, Canada, and Europe to increase audiences and enhance their experience with highly effective commercials, narrations, animatronic character voices, whatever your dark heart desires. Let me help you do more, scare more, profit more. Find out more at Voice from Hell on Facebook and at voicefromhell.com.
I don't know how much more discussing of stones I can take here.
I know
It's ridiculous.
it's weird because everybody, now everybody has given this so much. Now it's starting to get some credence, right? The play's a hit. The Stones are verifying some of the things in the play, and and now we're finally answering America's greatest unsolved mystery at this the first unsolved mystery, and then the 1940 scientific conference, which is going to allow other people to study the stones except for the group that's been studying them. And it was originally going to happen, then it got delayed because there was new evidence supposedly. And now they were suggesting the lost colonists had gone all the way to Georgia.
Oh.
So 34 experts are there, and the guests are looking at the stones and reviewing the circumstances of the discovery. And Tom Jett, appears at the conference to say, look, I've had this stone since I was a kid, so it can't be a fake, right? It can't, but they basically, the science community looks at this and goes, wait a minute, we've got to look closer at these. And he's like, it could be real. It couldn't. The lead head guy was named Morrison, and he's like, the committee, as politely as possible, declares the stones to be fake. Largely on the use of two words, trail and reconnoiter. Both were not used in the English language recordedly until the 1590s. So it's been long after Roanoke. So Saturday Evening Post posts an article about it, and the fact-checking department, is like, no, we're not posting this, because it's not legit. And then also this guy Hammond, who's found the first stone, he left Emory University shortly after and has not been seen since. And no one met whoever he claimed to be with. No one met wherever he had ever been where he found it. And supposedly he had cleaned it with a wire brush, which would have removed any way of dating it or any way, especially back at that time. And suddenly we find out that Eberhard, the sculptor, the stone cutter, the guy who found it all on his property, and all these other guys were all friends, including Tom Jett.
Ew.
So the stones are pretty much fake. They don't blame Pierce, the professor who's been supporting all this. But they basically said, he did it. And at one point, after that Saturday Evening Post scandal pops out, Eberhard finds that, Eberhard tries to sell Pierce another stone. But by this time, Pierce is like, no, I'm not doing this. And so he shows him this other stone that says, Pearson dare historical hoaxes. We dare anything, that he's carved and makes it look exactly like the old, the other stones. And he says, if you do not buy this new stone for me for $500, I'm going to give this and you're going to be ruined. And of course, he takes his side to the papers, and that all the dare stones are hoaxes, and so they're dismissed. They're all gone.
Okay.
All right, except the first one.
Well, and here's the thing that makes sense to me, and then I want to be done with stones, because
Yeah.
stones. But the thing that makes sense to me about the first one a little bit, right? This is where I'm willing to stretch my boundaries, is if, first of all, if you're going to leave, it isn't like you're sending an email or you're texting or whatever, right? And there wasn't post offices nearly the way we know them even back in those times. Like, you had a courier that had to do this and send a message. Like, sending a letter was a fucking big deal, right? And especially if it's under duress, I could see somebody saying, okay, you know what we'll do? We'll leave a message and we'll do this. And I can also see the stone getting moved, getting dropped. Maybe they, people think things going, they'll take this route if we do this. So we're saying we're going to the island. They'll head this way. Let's work on this stone, which would take quite a bit of work back then, because it wasn't like a, pen and pencil.
Yeah.
And I could see that occurring because it seems to communicate legitimately kind of what happened along their route. Now, with that said, the whole thing is still weird because they didn't find the bodies. They didn't find anything. But I want to go to what I deem is the cooler part of the story. Sorry, travelers, because there's a ghost involved. So I want to get to the ghost, Mark. Where's the ghost?
Beau, why don't you do the ghost? I've done stones
All
for
right.
20 minutes. I'm done.
Stones, Mark. 20 minutes of this podcast.
I got one more last little bit on the stones. We'll wait, but I want us to do ghost first. People have been waiting patiently.
I need the ghost. Tell me the ghost.
Go for it, Beau.
Okay, so there's a legend that kind of about what happened to Virginia and everyone else regarding being integrated into a native tribe. I have no knowledge as to if this was just made up for the play or was they had any evidence of this at all. And all the websites are very this is what happened, and then they'll change little bits about it. So this is what
Beau, our non-resident expert, do tell us your expertise on this topic.
Yes. All right. So this is the legend. The settlement was attacked by a group led by a native man named Wanchese. But there was another man named Monteo, and he protected the colonists. It was we're not going to hurt them. We're going to protect them. And Virginia Dare supposedly grew up into a beautiful maiden, of course. And she had many suitors, including a native man named Okisco and a sorcerer, because that's super cool, called Chico. And Chico proposed to Virginia, but she refused. And so he cursed her. And she was turned into a white doe, like a deer. And Okisco had a good sorcerer friend who created an arrowhead made out of mother of pearl, which would undo the curse if he shot her with it, which seems like a weird way to undo the curse. Yeah.
Hold on. I need to pause. I asked for a ghost, and now we have sorcerers and people.
Yes, we're getting it. But
and
then you have to get to the ghost. The ghost, we'll get there. You just
okay, but I just need to make sure, because I'm sure listeners are like, what the hell just happened? So
the ghost is coming.
The ghost is coming, but so she got changed into a deer, and the solution to change her back, I just want to go with the stream of logic here is I'm gonna shoot her with an arrow, and this arrow will change her back.
Yes.
Okay. Mark, if I ever get changed into a no deer, not a deer, but a no deer, because that's what I feel would happen to me. Do not shoot me with anything to change me back.
If a shaman tells me it'll save you.
No, I want a glitter gun. That is literally the only thing you can shoot me with.
She wants bedazzled, is what she wants.
I want to be a bedazzled no deer. Continue.
Bedazzled not deer. You got it.
So the native man who attacked them, Wanchis, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've only seen it written. I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
He decides that he's gonna also shoot this elusive deer, because if you shoot a white deer, then that's super cool.
That's gold.
So he decides to kill the deer with a different arrowhead that he was gifted by Queen Elizabeth. Unbeknownst to each other, they're both tracking this deer, and they both come across her at the same exact time. And when they come across her, they both shoot their arrows at the same exact time, which means that she was turned back into a human and then subsequently killed at the same time.
Yeah.
And so Akisco took her back to the old fort at Roanoke and buried her there. And then from her body grew a bunch of grapes that were blood red and the sweetest grapes you could ever find. So
I'm just saying I don't
turns
like
out-
this story at all. I'm not on board.
turns out, and this is the funniest part, turns out that story was created by a wine company who is trying to sell their wine by making their grapes associated with Virginia Dare.
Yeah. Tourism.
Because tourism. But
Wow.
And it's funny because it's grown into, oh, I saw the ghostly white deer. I saw
yes,
it's
even now there are sightings of the quote unquote white ghost deer that people happen to see in the Carolinas.
So I just want to clarify that my ghost story just turned into nothing. And so it's a not ghost to go along with
It's a
me
not-
being a not deer. It's
Yeah.
a not
It's a not
ghost.
it's a not ghost, but capitalism is haunting us all the time.
yeah.
Yes.
I think honestly, my thing from all this is the idea of the lost colony being lost is completely bogus. I think we know
Yeah.
exactly where they were. I think we know exactly where they are. And it's the fourth voyage. The first voyage was to Hatteras, which was, Roanoke at the time, or Croatoan at the time, not Roanoke, sorry. And they basically spend one night on Roanoke Island during that whole thing and go back, but they stay at Hatteras. And that's where they met Manteo of the Croatoan tribe, and he's like, hey, we'll be friends. Now the second voyage comes in, and they split it between Hatteras and Roanoke, and the English were at war with the Indians at this point because they'd killed their chief and burned one of their villages before going back to England. So of course, the third voyage was the 15 men, and guess what happened? They got attacked, and and that was on Roanoke. And then the fourth voyage, the Lost Colony, was to go get those 15 men, only to discover they've been killed. And so we're going to stay here. What?
So I would like to discuss the American Horror Story Roanoke, because
So good.
when Beau brought it up, I'm like, obviously we need to start all of our research with a made for television show that involves Evan Peters. So I feel like this is where we should begin any sort of scientific research into a situation or historical research.
Yeah.
But I have to say, now hearing all of this and learning all of this, which of course makes me very similar to Beau, a non-expert on this topic whatsoever, I believe that I'm going to go with that there is a ghost haunting where Roanoke is, that is basically in the form of Kathy Bates, I believe, and kills everybody,
The butcher.
including a film crew. So I'm going to go with that story, because that story is closer to the
More
truth,
fun.
and
Yeah.
B, more fun, and C, more all-stars. What do we think of that?
We get the fun part of the conspiracy theories.
Oh,
because-
okay.
So 2012, I want to say, they discover a map at the British Museum that White had painted of Elizabethan United States. And it was the map is titled La Virginia Parts of Virginia. Hidden, but what's hidden on it is this blotted area where these two rivers meet right down from Roanoke. And somebody looks at that blot and says, hey, they used to communicate with invisible ink in case their boats got caught by the Spanish. Let's see what's there under this blot. And what do they find is the symbol of a fort, and that he used quite often. And now we're talking about the Spanish and the British were at war quite a bit. That's actually one of the things in the play is they talk, they're afraid, they see a ship and they're afraid to reach out to it. They're like, oh, well, they can save us. What if it's Spanish? And people are like, oh, the Spanish, they're not a problem. I'm like, wait, yes, they were. They may not have heard about Fort Matanzas down in Florida, but they might have. And that's where a group of French got massacred by the Spanish because they were Protestant and not Catholic. And guess what? Most of the people at Roanoke were Protestant and not Catholic. The Spanish would have massacred them. Matanzas is a thing we'll have to talk about another time when we do our around St. Augustine stuff. But anyway, so this fort would have been near another Native American village called Mediquin. And that was common. The Europeans used to settle near them because, hey, these people know how to live here and we can trade with them and survive. Now, they did, and it was about 50 miles inland, which would have matched the story of that first stone. And it kind of ties up. So they go there, no sign of a fort, but they do start digging up pottery. And it could be from that time that they now call it Site X, and there's another Site Y. There's a lot of archaeology stuff here. And they do find ceramics from different periods. They think they could be post-Jamestown stuff, which was only 20 years after Roanoke. And Jamestown made it. And that was only because they kept getting reinforced and resupplied. But they do think it's possible that these could be Roanoke because there's no pipes. And that was every Jamestown site, people were smoking pipes like nonstop.
Well, you know what's also interesting, if you think a little bit about the history, two things is one, if there aren't enough people around to bury people, because burying people was not, like a backhoe, like for everybody except for Sam and Dean Winchester digging a grave, it takes some time. Right. Or digging up a grave. Either way, it still takes some time to do that and bury people. Right. But one of the ways people used to desecrate sort of corpses was to burn them, because if you weren't, done with the correct rituals and stuff, that damned your soul and things like that back in those times. And I think it was true with Native Americans as well, like it or just to leave them out there, and there are animals and stuff, like it seems like, oh, we'd come across all this stuff, but depending on how it was done, maybe not, right?
And I think they went two places. I think some of them went inland, and I think some of them went to Croatoan. And they did do some archaeological expeditions in both places. They found stuff in both places. Hatteras, of course, now has had some excavation, but again, a lot of it's private property. It's tricky. Same with Site X and Site Y are private property. One's under a golf course, and that's going to be a little tricky. The golf course says, "Oh no, we never found a thing," but of course, they found some things like almost immediately when they did look. But I do think half of them went to Croatoan. I think at least some. There were stories of natives with gray eyes, and some even claimed to be descended from white settlers.
And buildings that were 2-story buildings that they weren't doing in like those areas until like the Europeans came in.
Yep. So and Croatoans lived there till the mid 1700s, which a lot of the other tribes were wiped out, way before then. So, they assimilated quite a bit. And so they were, it could be a lot of things. I think one of the cool things that they found in Hatteras was a rapier hilt that predates Jamestown, but of course it could have been something that was brought by Jamestown. But they think it might have been, remember I mentioned him earlier, Fernandez's rapier hilt, because it was something he was reported to have had. And he was quite a fencer as a pirate and all that. And there were also some like early gun hardwares and a slate writing tablet fragment that would have matched the first stone. So I brought it back. So,
well, I guess eventually this is kind of one of those things. Eventually, maybe they'll solve it. Who knows?
we had time travel. We never will definitively.
I don't know.
Again,
That's
history
what I
has
want
changed
to
on
spend
this.
my time travel. Let's go back and see what the hell Roanoke did. Like, it will be the most boring story. And if we come forward with it and like, we figured out time travel, and unlike solving Jack the Ripper, which would be kind of awesome, we're going to explain that these guys just kind of went their separate ways, and 3 years is a long time. And probably it actually turns out our lovely friend didn't even show back up in the right place. And he was like, they're all gone. It probably wasn't even the right city. Like, is anybody taking that for granted? Like, seriously.
Well, like I said, we talked about, that they did try to split between those two colonies initially. Why did he not go the short
Pick
distance
the other one
to the original, where they said they went? Hey, we went here. Oh, okay, let's go there. Nope. I'm
He's
going
an
home.
overdramatic teenager. Like, this is too far.
He was like, I got rid of my family. Yes.
It's the Harold and Kumar. Nope, we've gone too far. I left my keys. Nah, too late. Left my phone.
Oh my goodness.
It's ridiculous.
Well, listeners, if you have any Roanoke stories, we would love to hear them. And Evan Peters, I would love to have you on this show.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, you can totally
Dennis
call
O'Hare,
us.
Please give us a call.
Jessica Lang, like, we got a list. Any of you, Kathy
I'm
Bates.
willing to take you up on that coffee offer this time. So I promise. But also
lies and slander.
I'm
there,
not
Mark.
dissing the play. The play is amazing. It is, as a historical document of its own, the fact that it's been the longest running, I think, outdoor theater play that I can recall. I'm sure there's some record it holds, because it's amazing.
Clearly we should take a field trip to go see this play.
Oh yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, it's pretty, take it for what it is. It's entertainment, folks. And the fact that the Dare Stones kind of came out about that time, I think, is a little suspicious. And Hammond, the guy who found the first stone, he's kind of suspicious in his own right, because one of the groups he was working with, there was a thing called the Drake brass plate. I don't know if anybody knows about this. This is something we might do in another episode, but it's another great hoax where a bunch of college professors put this brass plate in California that supposedly Sir Francis Drake put down, saying claiming this land for Queen Elizabeth. And he carved on it, and he had done an image of Elizabeth on the back. And suddenly it was found along a hiking trail, and it was a big, scam to hoax another professor. And Hammond might have been part of that, but there's no 100% linking him to it. And again, he kind of disappears from history, so it's interesting to see what happened to this guy. But I do think there was more to that first stone. I don't think he was tied to that, but it is interesting that, the brass thing is another thing. But anyway, oh my gosh, so much stuff.
So much, but travels. So you guys, travelers, can go to Roanoke Island. It has, and we're putting a link in the notes. And by where, I mean Callie is doing that, and me and Mark and Beau are doing approximately nothing in regards to that. But there's a bunch of restaurants, there's a bunch of inns. You can go see the play. There's a lot of attractions. So if you just kind of want a sleepy weekend, I would suggest going to.
And apparently some of them are haunted inns, but I don't know if they're also created to sell wine.
Oh, probably. Go get haunted grapes. That's
All
what
right.
we recommend.
And if you want to see the Dare Stones, they after the scandal, they kind of got removed from public view. But because a few documentaries have tried to bring them back to life, they have been placed under time in the auditorium of what's the name of the school? I'm sorry, I lost my notes. Anyway,
Okay,
I'll put
Mark's
it in
gonna
the
put
notes.
that in the notes.
I'll put that in the notes, my notes. But there is a school that stones are there. They have been allowed to be viewed for various investigations, and you can write them to investigate the stones. It's Roanoke College, Gainesville, Georgia. Thank you. I just
There you
remembered
go.
it because
Okay.
I have my note here where I wrote to go see it. And
Oh.
I have seen the stones, and they are the first one definitely interesting. What's funny is the other stones are actually in the attic on one of the campus houses, which was, it shows how well they treat stones 2 through 46. They don't care, but that first stone is interesting. It's interesting.
And I agree. So with that, travelers, we hope you enjoy the FX series, American Horror Story, Roanoke. We hope you enjoy going and seeing the Dare Stones if you want to put that much effort, but definitely check out Roanoke Island, because if you get a chance to go there, it's absolutely beautiful. And you can see one of the longest running plays ever. And with that, Mark, Beau, thank you so much for being with us
Yes.
and going on that
From
journey.
Roanoke, Virginia, not Roanoke, North Carolina. So.
Yes, which every time I pass by Roanoke, Virginia, I do tell my friend, I make a joke. I'm like, I'm about to go to Roanoke. And she's like, well, I'll miss you. So
Croatoan.
yeah, exactly.
Beau, where can I find you?
Author Beau Lake,
Not literally.
not literally. Author Beau, actually no. Author Beau Lake for email, bowlakebooks.com, or you can find me on all social media as Beau__Lake. And I'd love to be pals with everybody.
Yes.
Okay. She says that we'll find somebody she doesn't want to be pals with. It is whatever,
Yeah. And everybody else, like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Please leave reviews, send comments, send your listener tales, send what your theories are on the lost colony of Roanoke. And we would appreciate it. Just go to erietravels.com, click that little send email, and we'll get it, and we'll look at it. And thank you all so much for listening. And we hope that if you do disappear, write a letter, just email somebody. Don't try to carve it into a stone or a tree.
Yeah, maybe a cryptic text.
Yeah, even just try to be a little less cryptic with your stuff. But anyway, gang, with all that noise, we'll see you on the other side.